Hello, fellow hellbound friends. My name's Jamie, and this is To Hell in a Podcast.
But you were born. Welcome to planet Earth each day. It's death and more.
Welcome back, guys, to the To Hell in a Podcast, a podcast of four friends who have known each other way too long, who sit down and have conversations with each other about the most random of topics we can think of. And we invite you to come and sit and listen with us. It's like a girls' night out, us four and all of you guys. So we hope that you enjoy it. I'm very excited for this particular episode because if you've been listening to us at all, you might know that the twins on this podcast, Dot and Jamie, are terrified of basically anything scary.
True story.
I mean, they're scared of a lot of not scary things like killer whales and things of that nature.
Hey,
Fun fact.
I hope your story is about killer whales, Erin.
When we were 2 years old, we were scared of flags.
Flags. See, this is my exact point. So, and it's not just them. Their brother is also a scaredy cat. It's just amazing. It's a family trait, and we really enjoy it. And today, me and Erin are going to do our best to scare the crap out of the twins, while the twins just try and make it through this episode without
not hard. It's not hard.
Getting nightmares. It isn't, but we're
you
really
don't have to try that hard.
Before I get into the actual meat of the podcast, the first thing that we're going to talk about is our TMI question, which is very on brand, which is, what is your greatest fear or phobia, kind of anything in that realm? What's one that you'd be willing to share on the internet that will be entombed forever so anyone anywhere can know about it? And I'm going to put it off to Erin first, Queen of Scots.
Okay. So I'm not secretive at all about my phobia, and it's clowns. I fucking hate clowns. And before anyone says, everyone's like, oh, you must have seen It. Incorrect. I saw the Tim Curry It for the first time in college because Brian and I had a Face Your Fears thing. So I watched It, and he watched Child's Play because he doesn't like that. And he tried to trick me so that he wouldn't have to watch Child's Play, which was some horse shit. Because I watched the mini series, which are 4 hours of clown, and he was like,
"Wow,
oh, are we gonna look at this other movie?" And then finally I was like, "Bitch, we're here to rent Child's Play. Get the fuck out of here!" It's apparently, I do not really remember this, but we went to the circus like children do. My dad took my brother and I, and apparently this clown like got on my level when we were walking like to our seats, because my dad said we weren't quite like into the arena area yet. And he got on my level, and apparently I screeched, punched him in the nutsack, and then like would not let my dad like let go of me the entire time. Like he kept being like, look, Erin, look, there's trapeze artists, you love gymnastic stuff. And I was like, no, like just basically panicking. So I mean, like I don't think I ever went to a circus ever again after that, which makes me feel okay because circuses are pretty shitty. But like, and what are you hiding, clowns? Why do you have to paint your face? Why can't I know what you look like, you fucking creep? I'm just saying.
Yeah.
They're all murderers. I can kind of do like the old timey clowns that like don't paint their whole face, that just have like the little like kind of like the Harlequin thing. I can do that. But if you're like,
I almost feel like those are creepy. Or so when like, what was it, a couple years ago when there was like those clowns?
Yeah.
The ones that kept showing up like randomly. Were you like stuck in your house and being like, I'm not going out?
Because as an adult, I'm like, fucking try me. Like, so Brian, so
it's a violent fear at that point.
Well, and the new It movies came out around Brian's birthday, and so he's like, will you go see it with me? It's okay if you won't, but like, will you go see it with me? And I was like, okay. I love Bill Skarsgård, he's adorable, so I was like, I'll go. Like the first 2 minutes I was like, nah, this is a bad idea. Like, I was like, okay.
Did you leave the theater?
I stayed the whole time. I'm a trooper.
Oh, wow.
But the very beginning, it's his creepy ass face in a fucking sewer, and I was just like, oh no, this was actually a really bad idea.
Poor plan.
Like,
He's
at least we know you love your husband. That's what
Yeah,
that tells me.
yeah.
You were
And I
willing
just
to go
kept-
see that.
I kept flashing back and be like, but Bill Skarsgård is such like a sweetie patootie. Like he's a member of like the cutest family. Like, and I kept trying to picture that, but I was like, nah. Like,
Especially when you find out he can do that weird eye thing all on his own, and you're like, no,
why
thank you.
he can do that is because his brothers used to beat the shit out of him, and it was the only way he could make them stop is so he would pretend to be dead and like make his eye move to the side so that his brothers would stop because I think he's the youngest of the older two, like Alexander and the guy who's on Westworld, I can't remember his name, but yeah, his other brother, and then they have like a younger sister, but like apparently, yeah, his brothers would beat the shit out of him, and they're tall Scandinavian men, so I assume puberty probably hit them all like
That would hurt.
So
Yeah,
that's why he can do
idiots.
that. So that helped me feel a little bit better to know that I was like, you know what, he learned it for survival. Just gonna like internalize that. All right, so I will go to Dot for hers.
We've already mentioned mine in the beginning is killer whales. Yeah, I've been scared of them for like a long time. I remember, so when we went to SeaWorld when we were younger, I don't remember, we're probably like 5 or something, and we were at the like Shamu show, and when he started splashing, was it just me or was it both of us, Jamie?
I remember being scared.
Yeah.
But
yeah, we bolted up the stair. Like, you know, my parents all of a sudden just see us young children just running away. We're like, no, we just noped it out of there. So, and then like watching all, you know, we grew up in the 90s. So there was all those fucking Free Willy movies, and Kyle, our brother, was obsessed with them. So
of course he was.
I remember being forced to go to a drive-in, and it was on like the big, like it was like Free Willy 5, and it was on the big screen, and it just being on the top of the van and like having my head down the entire time.
What's scary? Is it the size of the whales? Why is it any whales or just killer whales?
Because the chances of you ever encountering a killer whale like in the wild is so low that it's like
minimal.
So I
about
know
killer whales.
it is the size, like it is also the size, like when you get near them, like if you're at SeaWorld, like they're giant. And in the first Free Willy movie, there's, you know, he sneaks into like the park and it's like thunderstormy, and then it's like a flash of lightning, and there its face is like, right, all right.
I don't think that was
like,
supposed to be scary, Erin. Like, I don't.
It wasn't a horror movie, Free Willy, just so you know. It was a story about unlikely friendships more than it.
And freedom, and like the very green movement of the 90s, you know, like Ferngully, Free Willy, you know, like Free the Whales, Greenpeace, all that. No,
I'm anti whale. I was gonna say I'm pro whaling, but then our podcast would get boycotted.
Yeah, everyone, please don't let her phone you.
I am not pro whaling. No,
almost
Views
pro whaling.
expressed by some of the co-hosts are not shared by all of the co-hosts.
Yes, again, man, this is freaking the Ryan Reynolds, Blake Lively all over again. We don't share this opinion. But no, I do. I think the killer whale thing is hysterical because even sharks I would get, right? Like there are not lots of really, sharks really don't attack very many humans, but at least there are a lot of stories of sharks attacking humans. It's like, I don't know that there's any of killer whales even killing people.
There's killer whales, they've killed people
in captivity, certainly in captivity. But they are assholes. And I don't want to say that people deserve it, but when you lock a big creature like that up in a tiny cage and then that creature gets super crazy and ends up killing you, it's like, well, was it really the killer whale's fault, or was it the fact that you basically locked them into a whale asylum and then they turned insane? Like,
Jurassic Park.
Yeah, Jurassic Park.
Exactly. I mean, I'm just saying.
All I'm saying is when I see those, I feel a tiny bit of vindication. I'm like, see, evil. Pure evil.
Yeah. They're assholes, Erin, but like you're not their natural prey. So like,
I know. Jamie, do you remember when we were going to I might have been flying to Florida too, and
Oh,
we
yeah.
go to board the plane, and it's the killer whale plane that's like that's painted as a killer whale, and then there's pictures all inside of like SeaWorld stuff. I was like, this is my hell. I just remembered that. Like
I want that plane to exist when we go and visit you, Kelly. Like
I do too. I'll insist it's the one you take down here.
Can we request it? Can we please?
Right?
Can we have the killer whale plane? I don't care if you don't know what that means. Can you just paste pictures of killer whales all over the inside of this plane?
No.
Please and thank you.
No. I've done it once. I will not do it again.
Poor Dot.
Yeah. So Jamie, I'll pass it over to you.
You know, like when it comes to like traditional scary stuff, like I guess one of my bigger fears is like not necessarily zombies like in like the traditional sense, but some like weird mutant disease that like we have no control over. Like a worse version of like coronavirus, but even like something with zombie stuff, like where it like shuts down like everything, and then I wouldn't be able to contact like my family, and like how would I get in contact? Like that freaks me out.
That's very valid. That's
actually a very legitimate fear.
Yeah. I think that's like my biggest thing is like something would, that like would shut down like cell towers and like communication. So that idea of being isolated, I think especially.
I was about to say it's more isolation. It sounds like that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like I'm not going to experience a killer clown. I don't live in Maine, so like I'm not going to experience a killer clown at one time in my life. But like yours is actually a realistic fear.
Right. Like there's just so many weird diseases anyway, like rabies, and just like I remember listening to NPR not that long ago, but they were talking about like even on the tops of mountains they were like scientists were like looking at like disease or like viruses and stuff, and even way up there were like hundreds, and they're like obviously a very small percentage ever cross over, but like obviously coronavirus and all these ones where you're like or like with the AIDS and HIV, it's like there just has to be one little crossover event. I just find that really
well, and now they've said with like climate change and stuff, humans and animals are living a lot closer, so exactly. It's very valid.
All that,
Jamie, that should have been your scary story.
I know, and that's like what sometimes I like will psych myself out like thinking about that. And even like The Walking Dead, like that's what freaked me out more, like in the first season, of just like always just that chaos of like everything shutting down, and like how would you find your family? How would you know what happened to them? Like freaks me out. Or like what if like with like little kids where you have to like be quiet from like just all the
shouldn't have watched Quiet Place when I was pregnant.
I know. I remember I was pregnant too, and
we both were pregnant when that came out. Yeah,
it was horrifying. And I was like,
this is a bad plan.
And then my random like less realistic fear is aliens, but that's just because again anything that's like that unknown, like where I'm like I'm pretty sure that extraterrestrials exist, and so it's just like what would an encounter be like?
I feel like they've watched us and been like, oh, we don't want to
avoid that one. Just like
the trash planet. On the trash planet.
Yeah, we do not go to that one. It is shitty.
It's creepy over there. Yeah.
So I'll pass it to Kelly.
Yeah, so I would say sort of a probably more universal one is being buried alive. I hate that. I hate the very idea of it. Like I know Ryan Reynolds was in a movie where he's literally buried alive the whole time, and I was like, never gonna happen.
It was good.
No matter how much I like you, Ryan Reynolds, but no, I wouldn't be able to do it.
I'm gonna send you a podcast about. It's called Memory Palace, and they do like historical things. Which, spoiler alert, the story that I'm doing for today's theme pops up on there. But they have one about. It's just an episode about all the cases, or a lot of the cases of people being buried alive in America or being shut in.
You can assume that we'll never listen to that.
No, I
Being
think it's
shut
funny when I
into
tell
a-
you that it's a phobia, and then you're like, "Oh my god, I have a podcast that talks about nothing but that. Let me recommend it."
Yes. Well, that's like old.
You
It's
love
like
it.
old, it's old time. It's old timey ones.
Oh,
When,
and that's
they
just the
couldn't.
thing is that I don't like, because it did used to be a thing modern, before modern medicine and people were able to tell things better. But it did used to be a thing that people would get buried alive, mostly because people thought that they were actually dead. I'm just talking about the whole idea of somebody burying you alive on purpose.
Like knowingly, right?
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't have
that
a
would be
reason for
true.
that, just that it's terrifying and what a terrible way to die. But
But
one
you
of
just
my
can't do
mom's
anything
so-
about it.
Yeah,
You
but one of
can't
my
do
mom's
anything.
so intense fears is that I have a fear of roller coasters. I don't
Yes,
like
yes,
them.
you do.
I don't like them, and I have a funny story for why I don't like them. The first time I ever went on a roller coaster, we went to Adventureland, which, if you're not from the Midwest, you probably don't know it, but it's a tiny
mess.
Yeah, and it's a tiny little thing, and it doesn't have big, like it's not a Universal or anything where it has these huge roller coasters and stuff. But we went on a roller coaster called the Tornado.
It's a mess.
Yeah, which is a wooden roller coaster. So basically it's those old school bucket seat things where you just have something come down over your lap. Like there's no straps over your shoulder. It might be different now, but when I was there, that's what it was.
It is. Yeah.
But so I went on it the first time with my dad. It was the first time I was big enough to go on a roller coaster. I was very excited, except that because my dad was a lot bigger than me, because I was very small at the time, the lap band did not go down super far like it probably was supposed to. And roller coasters, they don't give a shit about that kind of stuff, especially not back in the 90s when I was doing this. But so as we're going up, me and my dad are in a seat. My two older sisters are in the box in front of us, right? The cart in front of us. And as we're going up the first big hill, which is super scary because it's super slow and you're getting up high, my dad starts yelling about how the wheel is loose. He's just yelling about how the wheel on his side is loose. And I mean, and if you know my dad, which these three do, he's got the most incredible yell. Like, I mean, he can yell so loud and so from the diaphragm that it's like it's really scary. And so
having
much
to yell at 5 children, I think.
Yeah, and so much of my life has been him jumping out of closets and yelling at us, or pretending to drive into lakes while yelling at us. I mean, it was a fun childhood that we had. But so he's yelling that the entire time, and then we plunge down, and I am lifted totally up off of my seat. Like, I'm not touching it at all. He has to put his arm across me so that I don't basically go flying out of this cart because I'm not properly restrained. And by the time we got back, I mean, I was crying. I hated it. And so then years later, we go down to Florida to Universal Studios Islands of Adventure, and they had a roller coaster called the Dueling Dragons. I think it's called something different now. It's like
I remember that one.
Yeah, we went on that.
Yeah.
Right? But I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to get on a roller coaster. I'm going to fight my fear. Like, this is going to be totally great. And we're going with some family friends and stuff. We have to wait. We get all the way up to the roller coaster, strapped in. And the Dueling Dragons, for people who don't know, is literally a dual roller coaster. So basically it's one where your feet hang down, there's loops and everything, but there's two carts going, and so at certain points like you're coming right at another cart. But I was like, I can do it. I'm strapped in. And then a family friend of ours, Chad, just looks at me, looks up at the cart, and he just goes, that bolt looks kind of loose. And I just lost it. I was like, get me out of this roller coaster. I totally lost my mind. I was like maybe 12 or 13. And I was like, get me out of here. Like, literally the guy came over. He was trying to calm me down. And I was like, let me out of this roller coaster before it starts going. I refuse to do this. And so he had to let me out. And Chad's wife, Amy, got very angry about him and had to give me a lot of apologies because of it. And I haven't been on like a roller coaster sense. Like, I'll go on like the virtual reality ones, or like some of the ones where most of them are inside. but like big, huge roller coasters, no, never.
Yeah, I've only done it once because it was when we were studying abroad in France in high school, and we did a French family trip, and the family took us to Parc Astérix, and I didn't know how to say I was scared of roller coasters in French, so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do this. But yeah, it was a case where, you know, I'm so petite and stuff, like I was just like, I think I got like concussed because my head was just banging on the side of it like the entire time. And then two, like, yeah, I was just coming out of my seat because it was one that you go upside down in. And so like I thought I was gonna fall through, and then afterwards it was just like never again.
Yeah, the same thing happened to me on the tornado, by the way. Like so I would like to make you feel smidgen better that my brother and I were pretty similar in size, and it was still like we both, and like my dad was sitting behind us. Yeah. And he was like, you guys are fine, like science. And he was trying to explain to us, we're like, shut up, Dad, we're gonna die. Like, I like roller coasters now. I eventually like went on one, and it was really fun and it was safe, but like they didn't have seatbelts. And like Max, when he was little, was like really skinny. Like he was really gangly, weird looking kid. And like he and I were just so tiny, and like this thing wouldn't actually click in far enough to fit us. And I was like, hi, this is a problem. Like, but I didn't realize it was a problem until we got up, and then my butt lifted entirely off the seat, and Max was like, Aaron, I've got you, but he's like,
I remember at Universal, I went in one of those ones that just shoots you up. You know, goes that.
Yeah, we both did.
I did the same thing where my butt came off, and I like, you know, went up, and I could just picture the things opening up, and me just go,
and then you just fly.
Yes, just being flung out.
I know.
Well, before we went on, yeah, that was like the first time we had done anything like that. I think our older sister Lindsay convinced us to do it, and they were kept fussing. My thing wasn't locking, and it was like going to start in like 10 seconds, and they kept fussing. So I really was like, well,
this is it.
It was called Dr. Doom's Fearfall. So I mean,
yes, tell my family I love them.
I know. I throw Kevin under the bus because he went on one like that. I think it might have been the same one. And he's a wimp too. And he said the girl next to him was like, "Can I hold your hand?" He's like, "No." He didn't both hands to grip. This poor girl was just like, please.
Oh,
Kevin, what a harsh man.
So he's all about putting like the oxygen mask on his face first before assisting the people around him.
Okay. Like, oh, good to know.
That's amazing.
Like, screw you, bitch.
Oh man, that's a good one. But yeah, so it's good to know that all of us at some point had a little bit of a phobia of a roller coaster, and I just never gotten over it. I probably will. I live in Florida now. I'm sure I'll have to start going to Universal and Islands of Adventure. And I want to be over it. Like, I know that roller coasters for the most part are fairly safe, especially now. They were death traps in the 80s and 90s, but for the most part now they're pretty safe, you know. But because I do think I would enjoy it if I could get myself to go on one, but I have to go with people who are sensitive and aren't going to try and tell me that something is wrong with the thing right before we go.
I'll go with you, Kelly. All right. I'm a gentle spirit.
I don't know if I want to go with you though, because you went on that freaking Aerosmith one that takes you literally up at a 90-degree angle and then just like whoop, and drops you.
Yes.
I mean, it's like, you're crazy.
It was super fun though.
Yeah, and you're the only one who would go on it. My parents were like, no, and I was like, hell.
I had to go by myself. Yeah.
You would hold hands with her.
I would. I would definitely,
and I would probably demand it. So.
I would be like Kevin, like, no fucking lady. I would be like, yes, we can hold hands.
Perfect. All right, guys. So now that we've gotten those fears out of the way, we're going to move on to our next section, the main section, which I'm super excited about because, like I said, I love nothing more than scaring the twins. It's one of my favorite things. I'm still trying to convince them to go to haunted places, even just a fake haunted house. They won't even do that. So it's fun to be able to
which sounds ironic. I'd actually rather go to a haunted place than a haunted house.
Now that logic makes no sense at all to me. You'd rather go to a place where it's real than go to a place where you know it's fake.
Yeah.
Because I can I'm not really that scared of actual, I think ghosts exist, but I'm not for some reason they don't freak me out the same way as over the top, jump.
People jumping out at you, jump scares.
Well, that's excellent news because
I could do.
I've got a place that we can take you, Jamie.
I've got a few places where we can go, especially when you come down to Florida. So yay!
I do not share Jamie's belief, so
we'll just get you drunk, Dot. We know how to get you places.
Yeah, we'll just get you drunk and come along.
Yeah,
but so basically, guys, I know. But so, guys, today what we are going to do is we're going to tell our favorite, or in some instances, our favorite historical, looking at you again, Dot, urban legends. So urban legends, scary stories, just kind of, something to be scary. So normally what we do is we let people choose who goes in which order. However, I think that it would be best if the twins went first. And if Aaron and I closed out the episodes, just so it's the last scary thing they have to remember before they go to bed tonight. So.
I'm sleeping with the lights on. Sorry, Matt.
Get an eye mask, dude.
Exactly, because it's gonna be scary. So Jamie, Aaron, Jamie, Dot, which of you would like to go first?
Dot,
Jamie, you can go first.
You got.
You want me?
Yeah, you got your history.
Okay.
Mine's not that long.
Mine's, it requires just some background and then some closing. So at the beginning, let me first introduce you to the main characters of this true story. It takes place at the close of the Civil War. So we have Henry Rathbone and Clara Harris. They're actually step siblings, technically. Their parents married each other, and then the two of them fell in love and are engaged. Weird. But that's not the purpose of the story.
Little cruel intention.
So yeah, exactly. So the Ryan Phillippe and Sarah Michelle Gellar. But anyway, so they moved in political circles. Clara's father was a senator from New York, and then Clara became somewhat of a favorite of Mary Todd Lincoln. So anyway, we're in Washington at the end of the Civil War. They're an up-and-coming couple, young, beautiful, connected. And so that's exactly why they're invited at last minute to go with the Lincolns to Ford's Theater on April 14th, 1865, taking a play because the Grants turned the Lincolns down because Mrs. Grant hated Mary Todd Lincoln.
There's nothing interesting that happened there on that day, so I'm not sure where this story is going.
Oh.
So yeah, we know what happened to Lincoln there, but I'll kind of tell you what happened to the Rathbones. So, his Lincoln's assassin, John Wilkes Booth, he slashes at Henry Rathbone as he comes into the box, and he gets cut from elbow. Basically, his whole arm was cut. And after Booth shot Lincoln, Clara's wearing this beautiful white dress, and it's completely soaked in blood. Just blood everywhere. And as we know, Lincoln succumbs to his injuries, but Henry does. His injuries are severe and he passes out, but he does survive, which in this case, survival isn't quite a blessing. So then after the assassination, they go on to get married, and then they have 3 kids, but they never really move on. In fact, Clara she decides she doesn't want to clean the dress that is soaked with blood stains, or she doesn't want to destroy it either because, it's historical. It's a thing of history. So she just puts it in the guest room closet at their parents' house.
Jesus,
in
Clara.
Upstreet.
I know, goddamn.
Imagine opening that closet and just seeing a bloody dress.
Just a bloody white
Order.
dress, and then just having a creepy
person-
Clara behind you being like, it's history. Like,
Well, that's the thing is, I never throw out clothes anyway, so like same Clara. Although I would dry clean it before I put it in there.
yeah, you know, I mean, maybe get off the former president's blood. That's all over the freaking place. My God.
So then, of course, this is where we get our ghostly hauntings. And supposedly, Clara stayed and was in that room on the anniversary of the assassination. And she wakes up in the middle of the night and she hears Lincoln's laugh coming from like the closet. And then there's another guest who stays there who reports they have the same thing, sightings of Lincoln's ghost. And then later, there are stories by like later owners of the house that they hear a gunshot on the anniversary of the assassination.
Did she take the dress with her when they left the house?
Well,
down?
okay. Well, so let's continue on with the story. So Henry Rathbone never really recovers because people blame him for not doing more, and he blames himself. So he becomes an emotional and mental wreck because of the guilt. He like suffers from delusions, hallucinations, and just becomes very erratic. So like this bright, beautiful couple in Washington now, like their marriage is strained. She wants to leave him, but she knows that she can't divorce him at that time. And so it's just like a sad existence. Finally, they bounce around and go to Europe to try to get cures for his mental illness. Going to like those, like medical spas or just like getting away. So it's there in Germany where we set our next big scene. It's Germany. It's the dawn of Christmas Eve, 1883. So Henry is carrying a gun and a knife, and he's trying to get into their kid's bedroom. And of course, Clara's like, no, like you can't go in there. And he ends up shooting her and killing her. And then he starts stabbing himself. He stabs himself 5 times, but like with the assassination, he ends up surviving. She dies, and then he gets sent to an. Yeah, the kid survived, but she dies of the gunshot wounds. Somehow he survives stabbing himself 5 times, and then he goes and is in an asylum for the next like 30 years of his life. He dies in 1911. But cut back to the dress. So before his dad dies, one of the sons. Oh shoot! I forgot to cover the most important part. So Clara, after she had seen the ghost and heard the ghost, she it's like out of a Poe tale. She boards up, or she puts bricks on the closet, so she bricks up the dress in the closet.
Get rid of the dress, Clara.
Seriously, I mean, even if you don't want it, sell it to somebody at that point. Like, she probably could have made a mint on it. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah, but then that would be equally cursing if you make money off
somebody
of,
else, aren't you? You're cursing somebody else.
That is true. But anyway, their son goes and he tears down the bricks in the closet, and he burns the dress because he feels like it's cursed his family, it's cursed his parents. They had this miserable life after. So I just wanted to end with, there's this American Heritage article on them, and it sums up, and it's like, it's a legend of myth and fear, this bloody gown visited by ghosts. It had witnessed supreme tragedy and brought new tragedy, madness, murder, they said. And finally, the bricked-in closet where it hung unworn for decades was broken into, and it was taken off its clothes hanger and burned to ashes. So
I mean,
that's the sad, scary.
Jesus.
Yeah, that's more just people being so dumb. It's like, yeah, don't keep blood dresses, guys. That's something I think our podcast can 100% improve of saying, don't keep bloody dresses.
that you
It's
wore
never a
when
good
someone was
idea.
assassinated next to you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Ugh.
Especially a historical figure that they're always going to come back and haunt you. Come on, that's
That
not
makes
hard.
Yeah,
to figure
yeah.
out.
Them up.
They could have predicted this,
Like
but
not like
anyway,
a full
that's
poltergeist.
that is my because you always hear about, obviously, with the assassination, you just hear up until Lincoln dies, and you don't know about this couple who were with them and obviously were cursed afterwards. So
Nice.
that's my story. See,
I would say
was-
on the scary scale, what do you think, Aaron? I give that a 3.5.
Yeah, I'd say 3.5.
Yeah.
I wasn't
gonna say
going. I was
three.
going for.
I was gonna say 3.
I was going for
I was trying to be
thematic
nice.
thematic Poe like atmospheric versus outright scary,
Well,
because
we
I
didn't
know
give
you
you
guys
a
are gonna.
0. We gave you a 3. Okay, so
I know you guys are bringing the goods, so I just didn't want to scare our listeners.
And I'm sorry,
right
Jamie,
off
I
the
should have
bat.
asked you too. What is your level of scare with that story?
Yeah, that one doesn't scare. Like I would say like a 3.5. Like it's it's yeah, it's very much like a Poe, like a haunting.
Mhm.
Definitely.
right. I appreciate
No.
that you had a smart family member though who was like, hard pass, Mom. I'm gonna burn this dress.
We're
Bye-bye.
gonna burn it. Yeah.
Seriously, at least they
I
had
know.
one person in their family who knew what the hell they were doing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
He knew how to take care of curses. All right,
Yes.
Jamie, your turn.
So even though I'm scared of scary stories, every year I read, I always look at the website Jezebel. They have like celebrity politics.
Yeah, they have good ones.
I always like they used to do pissing contests on the weekend where they'd have a theme, like the worst thing you've seen on public transit, and people would post their stories. But every year for Halloween they do scary stories, and I always read them, even though then they always terrify me. So one that stuck with
I slow scroll.
me too.
I'm like, ooh.
I know. One, I think this is maybe 2 years ago. So it came from, it's credited to a user called Theater Guy. But it always freaked me out. Like I get more freaked out by, like I said, things that seem like they're possible, like in the more like actual people, like serial killers and things like that, rather than the supernatural. Mine asterisk aliens. aliens. But so this story goes, so this person, I'm assuming based on the name that it's a guy, because they said this happened to them. They were in high school. So he was working on a paper that was due the next day. His parents had to go out. They were going to like a dinner or a concert. He says, he can't remember anymore, but they were out. We were going to be out for a few hours, and it was like storming, and he was working on his paper at his laptop, and the door to his room was open. And it said like the desk and like a mirror, and then like, the door. And he said, this paper was due the next day. So he really was only getting up, looking out the window sometimes because of the storm, and then kind of coming back, like just like not leaving the room. And then when his parents came back at 11, they like freaked out and are like, did you have friends over? Like what happened? And he's like, what are you talking about? And in the hallway and the carpet, there were these muddy footprints. And so they like trace backwards, and they see them coming in, but they don't see an exit. And suddenly they hear a door slam. And so then they call the police, right? Obviously.
Love it.
As you should.
Call the police. When the police come, they go, they've left, they are outside, and the police are checking to see if there's anybody else in. And then the police are like, okay, it's clear nobody else is in the house. Whose room is the one at the end of the hallway? And the kid was like, yeah, that's my room. And so then when they went back to the room, this part I just have to make sure I'm saying right, because they point at the door that had been open the whole night, and on the door, written in black Sharpie, says like my log. It says, I'll quote, 8:47 p.m. I see you. 8:53, you forgot to lock the back door. 8:59, you seem focused. 9:24, turn around. 9:47, look at me. 10:15, look at me. 10:37, look at me. 10:49, look at me. So they said for nearly 2 hours, somebody stood in the doorway and was just like waiting for them to. The back door was unlocked, was to like look at them, and they're like, "What would have happened if I would have turned around and like looked at them?" And that like I think because what freaks me out is that innate fear of being watched. Like I always have the nightmare of like, you know, you open the blinds and there's somebody there. Or
Oh yeah.
the other, that's the story I was debating between that one and then there's another one, you know, where this person lived in the apartment and like things just seemed always off, and then they found out that hole and that somebody was living in the wall. And
yeah, I was gonna
those
say
stories are so
those
freaky.
ones always.
Yeah, those things.
Yeah,
freak
or
me
like
out.
in the
idea of
attic
being
or
watched.
something where they come down.
Yeah, there was someone I know that like that actually like documented happened too in Kansas City when we lived there, that there was someone living in their attic and they found like a cot and like food and water and stuff, and like apparently he would come down during the day and eat in the kitchen and then come back up, and the reason they got caught is he didn't realize, I think like the oldest daughter was homesick.
Yeah.
And she was sleeping and he was like in the kitchen. She was like 16, 17, you know, and he was in the kitchen eating, and she saw him and like screeched. Like you would,
you would.
Like he ran, you know, like he ran out of the house, and you're like, dude, like I understand you're probably not doing great in your life if this seems like the best option for you, but like maybe not.
I remember like I don't know if it was like My Favorite Murder or it was one of like one that I was listening to. It was like old timey one where like they lived in this guy lived in the attic, and he was like teeny tiny, like he was like so frail, and he had been living there for like decade, like a long time. And
I mean,
I'm just like,
I'm just impressed at that. Like that's dedication.
That's dedication to staying there. That's true.
It would send me into like a mental institution if I found out somebody was doing it. Like
that's the thing. Like I think then I would never feel. I would always feel like being watched. Like and
that's why
you wouldn't feel secure.
The bedroom door, you mutant.
I know.
Like who sits with their bedroom door open when they're home alone?
Especially when your back is turned to the door.
I mean,
it's the same
immediately that screams white man.
It does make you just go like, you know it's a man, because there's no girl who's sitting with her back to an open doorway and not checking that shit out. Like, no way.
Who's not like, I'm just gonna lock this door real quick. Like, you know.
Like when I
always
when I come in anywhere, I look in each closet or like
I was about to say, I always have nightmares where but it feels really real, where I wake up and my door is ajar.
Yeah.
Like
and you're like, I know I shut that shit.
And I'm like, no. Like I remember one apartment I would always have it when I lived alone, of course. And then that's why it made me laugh, Aaron, when you were saying when you were little that you punched the clown in the nuts, because I'm like, my instinct, Kevin once jumped out at me from like wasn't even hiding very well, but it was in that apartment where I always had those nightmares, and I just slid down the wall and like so my instinct was just like
yours is to just play possum, basically.
Yeah, Kevin was like dying. He still brings it up because I literally like went against the wall and just slid down.
I like that your immediate reaction is just to give up. It's like, well, you got me.
I punched Max when he scared me, so he didn't do that anymore.
Yeah, no fight or flight, just give up.
Okay, you did freeze. That is one of them. Okay, fight, flight, or freeze. There are three.
Yeah, that's true. I froze.
Yeah. You probably don't want to be a freezer in most situations, but it's good that you know that about you now.
There are some where it's appropriate.
Of course. As always.
You know.
Yeah, that's why you guys want to bring me on some scary thing, because then I'll be the one who goes first.
Kelly and I are like, we're gonna be the Kevin. Like, no.
As she falls on the
and you guys, then you can make your run for it. I'll sacrifice myself.
We won't abandon you. That's the whole reason people die in horror movies, is because they allow themselves to be split up. It's like, I don't give a shit that the guy has a machete. There's 7 of us. It's like, it's better to attack and maybe, get cut up some than to just like let him get you all alone.
Yeah, hard pass. We're staying together, ladies. Okay.
Definitely.
We're not white men.
All right. So Aaron, rate that story in terms of how scary it was.
Is our scale out of 5 or 10?
10.
I'd say about 8, because that's one of my personal fears. Like I not gonna lie, I'm definitely like, it's gonna take me a while to go to sleep tonight. Luckily we live in a very small apartment, so I can check every corner of this house.
And now you have a husband you can sacrifice if you hear any noises.
Yeah, because Brian, one time we heard a noise and he like grabbed up a piece of wood and he's like, "Oh no, I have to investigate this, don't I?" And I was like, "Yes, you do."
That's why I place his side of the bed is closer to the door.
I was originally gonna go higher with my ranking until he started writing on the door with a Sharpie. Then I was like, I don't really, because like I feel like I would smell the Sharpie, but whatever. So I'm gonna go with 4.5.
I was gonna say a 5.
Yeah, because like I feel like it's super creepy to know that there's like footprints and there's only one track and like he was clearly at the door. Like that's super creepy. And then he wants to add the Sharpie and I'm like, I don't believe that as much.
Yeah.
Because like what? Yeah,
because a guy can write on the door, make noise, because Sharpies aren't silent.
That was the one thing I forgot to say, that they were wearing headphones, listening to music.
What a fuck? That is a white man.
Well,
yeah, definitely.
But I am sorry, because it part of the ranking does go by your delivery. So missing one of the biggest things.
I know. I realized that, and then I just wanted to clarify right when you said sound. I was like,
what a white man. Like a white man. Like
ridiculous.
We don't get to listen to headphones when we're home alone. No. We have to be on alert.
We never get to just put both headphones in and listen to them. No, never.
No. All
But
right. So I can do mine next, okay?
Okay.
And Kelly can go last. Okay, so mine is kind of historical in the beginning because it does have some historical background, but it is a modern one, okay?
Have mercy.
So, okay. This takes place in a place called Dudleystown in Connecticut. It's like a really pretty part of the state, very like lush, beautiful. And it was originally founded in like the 1700s, and it was called Cornwall originally. But the family who kind of moved there and ended up making up a bulk of the town was the Dudleys. And the reason that they fled was they had an ancestor who was actually beheaded by Henry VIII way back when for treason. He conspired against Henry VIII, and it put like a curse on the family. And so family members were like dying really weird or like having a bunch of like really bad luck and stuff. So they're like, let's just move to the colonies. Everything will be fine. Super wrong. So they moved to the colonies and it went okay for like a little bit, but then like they all started dying, and like the Dudleys specifically started dying in like super weird ways. Like one of I believe she was the wife of one of like the original Dudleys that moved. She ended up getting electrocuted on like a clear, beautiful day. Like she got hit by lightning just in the middle of the day. Several family members just went like absolutely insane and had to be institutionalized. One woman, her husband went away like to another town for business, and he came back and she was like completely mad, like ranting and raving, and she told him like she had gone to the forest to get something because I think their well was near the forest, and she told him that she had been attacked by a shadow man and that he had like attacked her and like beaten her, and that she just went absolutely wacky. So a couple other ones like committed suicide, some like, but a lot of them were institutionalized. Like a lot of them got really early dementia as well, like really kind of like 40s 50s like age dementia and stuff like that. So like it was just all like a hot mess, and so everyone was like, you know what, fuck it, and they left the town. So for a while it was kind of one of those like ooh sort of spots to like go and visit. And then the Warrens, Ed and Lorraine Warren, they're total bullshit con artists. I could do like a whole episode on them, but they did like Amityville Horror and like Annabelle and all that sort of stuff that like people think whatever. But they went to the town and said it was like possessed, like demonically possessed. So a bunch of tourists started going there because like people didn't find out they were frauds until much later. So they went and they were like, oh my God, let's go and look. And the people around were like, leave us the fuck alone. Like, get out of our city. Stop. And like people, dicks like they do, like vandalizing and like, do all this stuff. And so this organization called the Dark Forest Entry Association came to be to protect the town. All right. So they are still there to this day. They still exist. And apparently people like, the name's not creepy because the road that you use to take into Dudleystown is called the Dark Forest Entry. I'm like, don't name it such a fucking creepy thing. Like,
Yeah. Sorry, if you want people
really
to not
common
think your
name.
town is haunted, don't use the most haunted
Yeah.
names you can possibly
Yeah.
think of.
And they're really sketch. Like whenever people go and ask them and like try and interview them and stuff, they're like, that doesn't exist. We don't know what you're talking about. Like won't answer any questions, even though there is quite a bit of historical backing of some of that. Not all of it. A lot of it's like rumors, hearsay and stuff, but there's a lot of historical backing for some of it. So people started camping outside of the town, like in the forest. And apparently it was a very common like camping spot for a nearby town in Connecticut for like Girl Scout and Boy Scout troops would like camp there and stuff like that. And people would report that at night it was silent, like dead silent. There was no bugs, like no wildlife. There wasn't any birds. Like in the morning, the only time you would start to hear things is once the sun started to rise and you would hear like birds chirping. A lot of people who went into the town when they could, like back when it was easier to trespass, because it's pretty much impossible to do that now. They would say that it would be like windless, like the place is like completely void of like motion, but they would go to like light a cigarette and the flame would move like it was really windy, even though they could feel no wind and everything. And like multiple people documented that. So Blair Witch came out, and there was some rumor that a lot of the stuff was kind of like based off of the town, because the town is really creepy looking. It's just like foundations and stuff of a bunch of homes. Like it's completely like been destroyed by the elements and whatnot. It doesn't really look like a town anymore. And a bunch of the stuff in Blair Witch looks like that. It looks like the foundations. It looks like that. So a bunch of people started like trespassing and we're like doing like, once again, a lot of shitty stuff. So now it is pretty much like impossible to get in there. Like the Dark Forest entry, like the Dark Forest Entry Association people like block you. They will like take down your license plate number. They will arrest you, and they don't play games. They don't let people in there anymore. But people, when they would go, would report that their phones would stop working, GPS would stop working, that they, and a bunch of people said that they took objects from the town and they also were cursed. So people took like stones from the foundation, like morons, because that's what morons do. Similar to the bloody dress. Okay.
Yeah, don't
like
take cursed
they took the rocks, and people said that like one person got in like horrible car wreck leaving with the rock in the back seat. Like people like one person like went into their home foreclosed and stuff like that. Like all this like bad stuff happened to people. They would get really sick, like all these illnesses, and then they would return the stuff back and that stuff would stop happening. And it's like still pretty well established as like a super creepy place in the United States. And what makes it even creepier is that like they do not let you go into it. So people are like, why not make money off of it? Like most of these things,
like Salem, get that money.
Yeah, like you can camp here like these nights of the year and stuff like that, but they do not let anybody in. Anyone who asks questions, they like, we don't know what you're talking about. That's never happened here. Those are all lies. And it's like super sketch. But it's something that like it's super heavily controlled now. And it's like you basically have to park like miles away and sneak through the forest to get in. And even then, like most people have been caught because they know cars from the outside. Like it's not a big city surrounding it. So they see your stupid out-of-state license plate and they're like, hey there, Massachusetts, what you doing? Like, they figure out pretty fast, that people are from out of state. And so it's just this like creepy place that no one can go into, and it's patrolled by a creepy ass named organization and has like a bunch of documented scary shit that happened there. So as much as I would like to take us camping to Dudleystown, we cannot. You can't even camp in the forest around. It's like 200, it's like 200 acres, of land. So it's a lot that they're patrolling and whatnot. But apparently the townspeople also help out, which I'm sure is a part that they're very annoyed by people being dicks, which is sure.
Yeah, understandable.
There's some sketch elements
very
to that.
cult-like stuff with it.
Yeah, and like there was rumors that in the 70s, because of course there was satanic rituals and stuff going on there, and there's no like evidence of that ever happening, but like people would say they'd see like fires being burnt in the town, and they would go to like investigate, and then there would be no fires anymore and stuff. So there was just a lot of like sketchy things that happened. But once again, there was kind of satanic panic and like cults and everything in the 70s and 80s. So that one I was like, I take that one a little bit of grain of salt. But apparently commit treason against Henry VIII, and your family is cursed for forever.
I know the Dudleys. Maybe some of the insanity was they were upper class though, inbreeding.
Inbreeding.
Which does,
All right.
that does tend to be part of it.
Inbreeding doesn't lead good to your ancestors. All right. So don't do that, people. If you
don't even think about it.
Otherwise, they
even
might
if you have a hot
cousin.
Even if you have a hot cousin, don't think about it.
A cousin's not even the worst. They were like siblings. I mean, like, you know, there's some things there. But that is Dudleystown. I would love to take us there, but we would get arrested and possibly murdered by the Dark Forest Entry Association. So
yeah, probably best to avoid it.
And I feel like there's enough of them that I don't think we could find them, guys. So like, I'm just gonna put a no on that one for the haunted places that we need to go to.
Fine.
Disappointing. I so wanted to go.
You did.
All right, so Jamie, Dots, scale of 1 to 10. How scary do you find that story?
I'd say like a 7.5.
Yeah, I'd say like a 6 because I can't go there, so it's like it's not somewhere like that I can go and see. You know,
can't get you basically.
Yeah, it's not a person hiding behind the door or in an attic. Like,
but we could drive you there.
I know where
and
it's
then,
at.
Drop you off, so the Dark Forest Entry Association comes to get you.
Yeah, if we just all of a sudden became evil assholes, we could definitely do that to you.
Yeah, you would never do that.
We're like,
I like knowing.
Did you not?
I like knowing that it's somewhere. It's across the country. It's static. It's not going anywhere. So I'm good with that. If you stay there, I'll stay here.
But you know. Yeah. I mean, who knows? Maybe one day someone will gift you with one of those cursed objects.
Yep. Oh yeah, because there's stuff that wasn't returned. People still have the cursed objects. Some people did not return them. So.
I'll accept no rocks. If somebody tries to give me a rock, I'll say, I know where that's from.
No, thank you. That's funny. I probably would also give it a 7, only because of the lasting effects of it. That's always creepy, right? Like, and I just find abandoned towns, abandoned anything, super creepy. Oh, yeah. There are so many abandoned towns and like amusement parks and stuff, and I would love to get to go to those. Oh, the best.
Because it just creeps. There's so much creaking and like groaning and stuff like that. You're like, what's
well, and the way that nature just takes it back over, you know, it's like, so it's this,
like Chernobyl, like Chernobyl.
Yes,
like, you know,
there is
so creepy.
I think it's in Japan. There is an amusement park that never opened. It basically went bankrupt before they were done building it. But it is just like basically out in the forest in Japan. And it is like covered. I mean, it's just like, it looks like an apocalyptic place, right? It looks like there were people and now there aren't. And, you know, like the forest is just grown back over it. And it looks cool.
Yeah, it looks cool. I've seen those pictures.
Mm-hmm. I would totally go there.
Straight up, let's do it.
Vacation idea. We'll take the twins with us. It'll be great.
You guys eat Japanese food, get drunk on sake, you'll be fine.
Yeah, let's say buy my ticket, give me some sake, and I'll be fine.
Exactly. All right, you guys ready for mine?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so
the finale.
I hope it's scary, you know, somewhat scary to everybody. But so instead of choosing like an actual event or something, I went with an urban legend that's actually more of a creature. And so I have 2 stories about this particular type, you know, people's interactions with this particular type of creature. And just as a little bit of background on me, I love scary stories. I love urban legends. I love reading stories like this. I've actually heard all 3 of these stories, which I wasn't going to tell you guys, but that's how much I read them constantly. Like I will read them when I can't go to sleep at night. That is how unfreaked out stories like this get me. This is not the same as that. This is probably the one urban legend that when I read a story that seems real legit, you know, like seems like it's somebody who really thinks or experienced this, that it still creeps me out. And it is the legend of the Skinwalker. So a little bit of background before I tell you about these these two stories is skinwalkers are a Navajo legend. Navajos themselves are extremely reluctant to talk about them. They believe that talking about them or discussing them leads skinwalkers to you.
No,
and-
Kelly, no. You're disgusting, Mom.
I know, I'm cursing us all. Most sightings, though, do seem to happen more in the southwestern United States. So a lot of them come from Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, but really there are skinwalker legends kind of all over, the Navajo Nation. And so a lot of them sort of all over have this, but it seems to be especially places where there's big, wide open space, seems to be a place where these things happen. And one of the reasons why, to me, it is so freaky is because it is a modern legend as well. I mean, this isn't something that people used to believe in, and now they're like, oh, well, actually, they were probably just seeing this. I mean, people still to this day see them, feel that they're haunted by them, or they're stalked by them. And so basically, a skinwalker is an evil witch or medicine man who uses supernatural powers and magic in order to prey on people. And they can transform themselves into animal-like creatures using the pelts of animals. So they're often described as being these very grotesque versions of animals. It's often described by people as saying, you see a dog, but as you watch the dog, you realize that it doesn't move like a dog. It doesn't sound like a dog. It's like, like after you've watched it for a few seconds, you start to see the inconsistencies in it. And that's one of the ways that you can spot a skinwalker. They're also reported to be able to run extremely fast and to be able to run from 4 legs up to 2 legs. That's often how people describe them. Their eyes are often said to be, red or yellow and the type that kind of shine in the night or in lights. And oftentimes they have some humanoid features. So it'll be a wolf with a humanoid face, or it'll be, a deer, but it'll have human hands and feet. So they're very creepy.
I'm just watching Dawn's face and it's like killing me.
Like, I don't like this at all.
She's terrified. 10 out of 10 for Eric.
Just based on their appearance alone, just like sort of grotesque. I mean, it makes me think of like, those weird like drawings of things on like medieval manuscripts, or it's like they look
because I can show you a picture that I have. This is just from one of the articles that I grabbed, so it's just kind of like the picture that's on the front. But so this, I don't know if you can see it.
Oh yeah,
that's kind of a depiction of it, right? It's like it looks like a deer. They're often said to smell like rotting flesh because it's not actually an animal, it's a dead animal's pelt that they're using. But so I'm going to read 2 stories. So these are not my stories. I got these off of a website called Cult Nation. But they're stories of people who have experienced it. The first one is somebody telling their family story, and the second one is somebody telling their own childhood story of a skinwalker.
Oh, babies.
So, we'll start with the first one, which I really like. The second one I think is super creepy, so I think you will like it. Well, Erin, you'll like it. Twins, you'll hate it. So, okay, so the first one. We live in a rural community on the Navajo reservation. My aunt and her 2 brothers were home alone while my grandparents had left for the evening to attend a chapter house meeting. They were in the house, and like many people from the reservation, they didn't have electricity. It had been dark outside for about an hour, and my aunt and my uncles were getting ready for bed. Outside, they heard noises as if someone moving things around outside. My oldest uncle went to look out the front window and saw a figure out by the truck. This was immensely out of the ordinary because the closest neighbor was miles away. Whatever it was, opened the truck door and began to dig through the personal items that my family had left in the vehicle. My aunt and uncles were frightened by the sight and knew that they should take action. They took out the rifle and all steadied themselves to hold it up. They flung open the door and aimed the gun at the dark figure. The figure turned and started to walk towards them, totally unfazed by the weapon. My uncle pulled the trigger, but nothing happened. The figure drew closer, and my aunt began to smell something like a rotting corpse. It was so strong it made her gag. My uncle continued to pull the trigger with no luck, and the figure came closer and closer. Off in the distance, headlights were coming up the road. My grandparents were returning. The figure looked towards the light and started to move away and tucked itself behind a tree near the house. My oldest uncle ran toward the truck with the gun. My grandfather got out of the car and my uncle pointed to the tree. The thing was poking out its head to observe what they were doing. My grandfather ran into the house and over to the stove and grabbed a handful of ashes and rubbed over the gun and placed an ash-covered bullet in the chamber.
All right,
He walked
Grandpa.
out onto the porch and fired toward the tree. Whatever that thing was, didn't expect the gun to go off. The gunshot echoed and the dark figure began running. My grandma chased my aunt inside, and my uncles and my grandfather went after it. There weren't many roads or paths, so as my grandfather and uncles chased after the figure, the truck was bouncing and the headlights were not fixed on one particular spot. My uncle swears that whenever the headlights would hit the figure, he saw a woman. Not only that, whoever it was running on all fours like a bear. My grandfather eventually stopped the truck, and as they neared the ditch that drops about 20 feet, he got out and began to yell in Navajo. My uncle says that he was yelling about a local woman. He yelled that he wasn't scared and that he knew it was her and to leave his family alone. A few days passed, and there was news that the woman that my grandfather was yelling about had died.
Good.
I've always been told that if you know who the skinwalker is, say their name and it will kill them.
Ooh.
Good job, Grandpa. I'm really proud of you, Grandpa. You are the man I
Yeah.
need. But
He knew what he was doing.
you are
You guys
hard.
ready for the second story?
The idea of somebody like running on all fours, like that creeps me out.
Yeah.
Or the fact that it just hid behind a tree, but where it could still clearly be seen and see them, you know, like
oh hi. Oh hi.
Also, I hate that these are all about like being. They hate that all like some of these stories about being left alone, like in the pandemic where I work alone a majority of the time, do not like.
Well, Aaron, let's just say if there are 2 skinwalker sightings in Nebraska, we'll know Kelly cursed us, all right? And if there's not, here we are. Yeah,
it's true. If there's
I will find out who they are and I will say their name.
Although, note to self, I will coat a weapon in ash, I suppose, and then I'll be fine.
Apparently, and that is something that I see quite a bit, because that's the thing is because they don't talk about it a lot, there's not a lot known about, you know, outside of the Navajo Nation. There's not a lot known about what exactly it is you do. I've seen one where you cover the bullet in ash. I've seen others where you have to say a specific blessing basically to stop a skinwalker from pursuing you, because that's basically the thing, is that once a skinwalker sees you, they will always see you unless you get a blessing and basically cleanse and purify yourself of that skinwalker's. Basically, you have to do something so that they forget your face, because once they see your face, they have your face forever in their mind.
An old priest and a young priest, baby.
Basically, yes, but in you know, the Navajo Nation. So I have a second story. It's shorter than that one, but I think it's just as creepy. So I hope you guys will like this one. And by you guys, I mean Aaron.
I will not.
This was written by someone who had this experience when he was a kid. And so that's why I think it's pretty creepy, because for the most part, you know, kids, it's like their stories are pretty authentic a lot of the times to me. You know, what they remember and things like that, I think can be pretty creepy. So this one says, I was a kid when this happened. My uncle and I were finishing up chopping and gathering firewood for my grandmother because it was getting dark. Driving back on a dirt road at about 30 miles per hour, I had this awful sense of being watched. Before I could turn to look out my window, my uncle quickly shouted, "Don't." I completely froze. My heart felt like it was beating out of my chest, then completely stopped when I heard a tap tap on my window. My uncle sped up and was loudly praying in my native language. I didn't know what was going on and thought it was over till our truck suddenly dipped from the bed. My uncle then started saying, "Look at me and don't turn away," over and over. Then I heard it again. Tap, tap, but from the window behind me. It was getting harder for me to breathe, and I wanted to cry. A minute or two passed, and the truck dipped again. My uncle looked around and sighed. It was quiet besides the truck and the road. He looked at me and said, "We will ask your father to do a prayer in the morning, so the evil will forget our faces." I remember curling up on the seat and just staring at the radio, watching the time, listening to my uncle sing an old prayer till we got to my grandmother's house. I called my uncle because I had a nightmare about that night. We talked about it for a bit. He said, "I didn't see faces, just eyes, like brake lights you see on the road. It watched you." Before hanging up, I tried joking with him about it. "Why didn't you just step on the brake when it was in the back?" There was no laughter, just a pause before he answered, "Because it wasn't alone."
Ooh.
Ah!
All right. That's a pretty good one.
Right? It's pretty freaky, right?
Oh.
Yeah. Also,
Again,
bless
it
that
has
uncle.
all the
What a sweet man. He was fighting for his
Yeah.
little baby. What a sweet man.
the watching and then not being like we've
Yeah.
all had where it's like even when I'm like home alone and like yeah I get freaked out or like don't want to look at like the window and I'm like oh don't look so like the idea of somebody being like don't do it is makes things immensely more terrifying.
Well, and just the idea that you're hearing noises, but you're not allowed to look at what's
Tapping.
producing it, you know, like that to me was just super creepy. So I hope you guys liked it. And now I guess I have to ask you to please rank it, the three of you. What would you give it in terms of how freaky it was?
I mean, I think Dot's 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like 9, 10, just like sort of like it's like a cult, but in like it's an unusually a cult sort of thing. I just find where it's like I can't necessarily discount it. So yeah, I don't like.
Yeah,
not like.
I feel similar where it's like I find more of those like native stories and stuff more creepy than just like other type of supernatural ones.
Yeah.
Well, they were like in the wide open country, like there was nothing here. So like those stories are always like
right. And
well,
I've heard of some version of like with skinwalkers, so but not those specific stories. So yeah, I would give it like an 8.5. Like that, mixes all the like the idea of the looking and the like
being watched and all that stuff. Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's one of those where I just think that, and I don't know if it's just because Native Americans, they've always been here. Like this, whether Americans want to, believe it or not, they've been here this whole time. Their stories aren't brought over from other countries or it's nothing like that. Their stories are from here. They're from the land we all live on. They were all over the United States, really all over the continental US. So to me, for whatever reason, that just gives their stories more power because this isn't some Romanian witch or whatever where it's like that's freaky, but how often am I going to be in a Romanian forest, right? But it's like here it's like there are Native Americans who live down here in Florida who still live here, it's like in their stories, their legends, they're from here. So I just find that scarier.
I'm going to go with 8 out of 10. I find like pursuant stories, like where something is like an unstoppable and not like stupid, like Michael Myers or something who like is weirdly impervious to all injuries until you do like this one thing, whatever. It's more so that like something that's like dedicated to like finding you, like those sort of things. I think it's like pursuant nature because like Michael Myers will kill anyone, like Freddy Krueger would kill anyone. But I feel like with those sort of stories where it's like, oh no, it's you. I found you, baby, and like I'm gonna come for you. Like makes me think of the movie It Follows, where like once that thing found you, it was coming for you. Like it might walk really slow or it might walk really fast, but like it's gonna get you.
Well, in some of the stories,
there's not anybody else out there to help you. Like with
and
the
in
desolation.
some of the stories, one of the reasons why they attach themselves to a person is because once a skinwalker has taken on the pelt of an animal, they have to continue to take on the pelts of animals. Like basically the pelts, they rot and they have to get rid of them. So there's some stories where they have to take the pelt of a human
Right.
in order to be able to walk as a human again. And so that's why they'll choose a specific person, choose their specific face, and so you know they'll continue to pursue you until they get that. So
My skin isn't that good. You don't want it.
it's like, you don't want this skin.
I don't
trust me.
moisturize enough, okay? Like,
You didn't
Yeah, it's
think that
very
keeping up with your
dry.
beauty routine was gonna save your life, but look at that.
it's very combination. You don't want that.
Yeah. My belly with the baby, it's all stretched out. You don't want
You don't want that. No. So, all right. Well, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. We hope that this freaked out some of you. We hope that you enjoyed the stories. If you like this kind of stuff, because I'm not going to lie, I could do an entire episode on skinwalkers because I find them fascinating. There are tons of stories about them. And clearly, Jamie and Dot love it. So
I
there's
have
no
some
reason
really
not to.
good stories I could send your way too. So
Right? It's just amazing. But we really hope you guys enjoyed this. Obviously, we don't always like to do spooky stuff, especially in what's basically April. It means we're going to have to get super spooky by the time we get close to Halloween. But, you know, we hope you guys enjoyed it. Let us know what your biggest fears are in the comments below. We would love to see, is it one of ours? Is it something totally different we didn't know that we should be terrified of, but we now need to be terrified of? Make sure to leave that below. And as always, thank you for listening. Please make sure you rate, like, subscribe, all of that good jazz wherever you happen to listen or watch this podcast from. And as always, stay safe. Don't talk about skinwalkers and stay out of Dudleytown. And don't wear headphones and leave your door open behind you where you can't see anything, and don't keep bloody dresses.
Dry clean that dress.
Oh, those dresses.
Yes, those are our life lessons for you from this episode. But guys, have a great time. Hopefully you didn't listen to this too late at night and you're able to get good sleep. And as always, we'll see you next time, our hellbound friends.
Bye.
You didn't ask for a bird, but you were born. Welcome to planet Earth each day. It's deathly more. And while we watch you die,